So I'm just going to get everything set up, lined up. Hey, Murray Marcus Murray, MMM. Ah, dear. Just have a look at who's coming in. Jane, how you doing? Just let Jane get her audio sorted. He's in. Hey, Phil. So just whilst we let people log in, we've still got another 6 minutes yet, but I always like to get started because you never know. So you can feel free to leave your videos off, sit there in your pajamas, or you can join me on video, whereby if you're on video, we can interact more. I can unmute you. We can have a conversation if you have questions that you want to say rather than put in the chat box. So I'll just open the chat box and I encourage you to write any questions. You can ask anything around. This is a biomechanics Q&A, so holistically everything. But what I have found over the weeks is I think people prefer a theme. So this week's the first week I've actually said, right, we'll do foot biomechanics, so that we've got a bit of a theme. So I'm going to call you Murray, otherwise my brain will just explode, just because that's who you've come in as today, with your Murray hat on. Good to have you along, Jane. Have you listened to a few? Yeah, because I think have you done all of them, Jane, or did you just do a few? Because I remember seeing you in there. I'm not sure if you were in on every one of them. So all of these, so Phil, I'm not sure if I've met you before virtually. They're all on. There's only one that I forgot to hit the record button. It was actually the busiest one. There's about 30 people in here and we had stacks of questions. So it was a really good one. And I forgot to hit record. So I'm sorry, so sorry. But all the others are on, I've uploaded them onto the YouTube channel. So if there are any you've missed, they're all on there. There's loads of other videos on there. So if you go to Biomechanics Education, the channel on YouTube, type it in. And then I'm just sort of filtering it out and creating playlists. I've realized I need to do playlists. So you can just go to a playlist. Although I haven't put these into a playlist yet because there was only a handful. But what you'll see is there's the I Move Freely sessions, which might be of interest to you. So all the remedial techniques in a class format, both quite static and strength-based, and also the cardio variations. So you can have a look at those. There's also some interviews with the biomechanics coaches, because we come from all sorts of different backgrounds. So you can go and listen to me interviewing some of the guys who've been through our programs. Some are strength coaches, some are manual therapists, some are personal trainers. So you can go and have a look. Hi, Tristan and Grania. So my apologies if I'm pronouncing that wrong. Grania, fantastic name. So what I'd like you to do, if it's okay with you, how you doing, Lindsay, is just type into the chat box is that Christian? How you doing? Just type in your profession and a question would be awesome. Let me know where you are in the world. How you doing, Sarah? Are you right, Sarah? I can see Sarah. She's not got the audio is coming through. Can you hear me now? Yay! So yes, Sarah's chosen to have a video on. Fantastic. You don't have to, as I've said, but please type in your profession. I'm aware that quite a lot of people can be hybrid. PT, massage, boot camp, kettlebells, sports therapy, whatever. So just let me know your background. I know most of you. Lindsay, which Lindsay is that? Is that Lindsay? Let me know. So personal trainer and GP referral coach, fantastic. Whereabouts are you based? Grania, Tristan, sports therapy, work with a lot of runners, amazing. Sarah, sports therapist, fantastic. The other thing I'm quite interested in is, are you working online? Jane is Pilates, yoga, and obviously, yeah, you've done I Move Freely. What was the other one you did, Jane? Was it the pelvis one? I think it was it the pelvis biomechanics? Can't remember. So Sarah, are you working online as a sports therapist? Let me unmute you for a second.
Sorry.
No pressure. It's fine. No pressure. You're very welcome to have your children floating around. Phil is soft tissue therapist and newly qualified. Welcome to the world of movement, Phil. Tristan not working online. Grania Belfast. So, we've got. I come over to the Queen's Belfast University, Grania, where we run through the Platinum Training Institute upstairs in the sport. Oh, I can't remember what the building's called, but the where they've got the gym and everything and the climbing wall. So yeah, so I'll be hopefully coming over to Belfast. It would be great if I could get over at the end of this year, but I'm not quite sure, obviously, with everything going on, even with the announcements this week. Lindsay, PT in Derby, so you're just down the road from me, up the road from me, Lindsay. And then I'm not getting any questions, guys, so let's have some questions. Murray, MSK physio, neurophysio, student osteo, he's a glutton for it, PT trainer, rehab therapy trainer, physical trainer, rehab therapist. Is that what you code name it all there, Murray? So yeah, let me know any questions. I've given us the kind of, hi Simon, hi Celia, how you doing? Just let those guys chip in. Hi Simon, hi Celia. So just type away your profession and question and where you are actually. Because sometimes what I find quite interesting is when we do this, oh, hi Laura, sorry, dropped in at the bottom there, is we do these and actually we can link up with people. And so we can say, oh, you're in Derby. Oh, I'm in Derby. Let's cross-refer our clients. So Celia, Simon, do you want to let me know where you are in your professional skill set? Laura, if you do the same. Hiya, Debs, how you doing? Physicians resort in maybe having the patient with the client. Yeah, got you, Murray. Yep. Murray, you're not Murray, you're Marcus, but we'll go with it because you say Murray on here. If anybody else is watching, they'll be going, who's Marcus? Oh dear. So yeah, let me know questions. So this happened last week, got no questions. So this is why I wanted to give it a theme. So, okay, let me ask you another question before I begin. Why are you here? Are you here because I said it was going to be foot biomechanics? Or have you just been sent by your line manager because it's some free stuff online, which is fine. Have you, is there something specific you'd like to gain? So Simon, level 3 PT, sports massage therapist, amazing. Celia, personal trainer based in Hertfordshire, mainly work with older clients. Guys, are you online? Are you working online? Are you doing anything online? Is that what you're trying to do? Are you already doing it and you would like something else? And it helps me, I can make this hour really, really fruitful for you who are here. The more you, oh, Granny has been sent by Platinum Training Institute, brilliant. Let me make it really bespoke to you guys. So, Phil, question for you, brilliant, thanks, Phil. Interested in your views on barefoot shoes, as I have seen good results from them in terms of back pain, but realise that they're not suitable for everyone. Right, great question. I prefer the questions to not be what's your view and be really specific. However, I understand where you're coming from, Phil. So what I'll do is talk around my company and our perspective on feet, foot biomechanics, and in relation to your question, sort of barefoot. We do run a running biomechanics workshop, which I've now put some of the content online, where we talk about barefoot, forefoot, heel strike, pose running, and the different styles, and we actually present the evidence for and against each one. So just a snippet of my view, Phil, is no one option is good for everyone. Barefoot will be good for some and not for others. If you are going barefoot, make sure your foot type is going to be okay with barefoot, and make sure you transition. So like any kind of exercise for the body, we need to allow it to adapt. So if you've been wearing shoes for 30 years and then you just take them off, you could actually get a problem. And then even if barefoot or minimal shoe is the right thing to do, because you've done it too quickly, the tissues are not yet tolerant enough to that different environment. So it's a really good question, Phil. I'll probably come back to it. Let's have a look. It's all right, they're coming up quickly now. Let me just go back, make sure I don't miss anyone. Home PC, I'm going to call you Marcus then. Celia, mainly group classes online. Yeah, the group classes seem to go quite well, don't they, Celia? I'm doing quite a bit of that as well. Some are doing it online. STA sent Simon, brilliant. Marcus Murray, still seeing patients, Parkinson's patients. Yeah, Celia, it'd be nice to get ideas for balance work with older clients. Yeah, great. Murray, Vivo Barefoot have a few good videos on their website regarding barefoot. And Jane, we're trainers with insoles now, and lock in barefoot of Achilles problem, can't run. Right, okay, brilliant. This information you're fitting in really helps me understand where you're all coming from, why you're here. Welcome, Barbara, who have I not welcomed yet. Fire, that's an interesting name. Is that how I pronounce it? Fire? Looks like it, okay. Alison, how you doing? So if you haven't let me know who you are, just type in your profession and any questions. But I think the foot is a really interesting subject. So I'm just going to pin my video. So if you want to, I think you can pin my video as well. I'm going to pin it because I'm recording this. Let me just move that. So, right, okay. So in terms of the foot, it is a very complex set of, it's around about, I think it's 33 bones, joints coming together. There's a lot going on in the foot. And in the exercise world in particular, which is predominantly my pathway, even though I do have sports massage therapy skills, I don't particularly use them. I have a special interest in biomechanics and human movement. And when we take the foot and understand it a little bit better, we realize A, it's really complex, and B, there's very little, let me try and say that accurately. We don't need to know a huge amount around the foot. Let's leave that to the foot specialists who've got a degree in foot biomechanics, like podiatrists and foot specialists. Because I think what's important for us as manual therapists and personal trainers, exercise professionals, is we feel like we never know enough and we want to learn more and more and more. And you can spend a lot of time learning. Thank you. 28 bones, 33 joints. Thanks, Marcus. Trying to learn a subject, but you're not going to do a huge amount for it because you're going to use your colleagues who are qualified to prescribe shoes, maybe wedge if that's appropriate, or support or create orthotics. So I think understanding our remit and what we need to know, and then what we don't need to know, leave it to the guys who are qualified. That's kind of where I like to try and come from. So I mean, obviously, the more you know, the better in terms of conceptually understanding foot biomechanics. But I think we can get very lost in a very complex set of joints. That's why it's, I don't know, have we got any foot qualified guys in here? So Marcus, maybe, I don't know. But foot specialists, is it 4 years for a podiatry degree or something? Which is a huge amount of time studying this area, and my understanding is that they would go above towards the knee, and a good podiatry course would talk about the hip, but they don't go above that, which is what we do. So we should really work together. So we've got Alison, student, final year, sports massage, KW, ice skating, MS neuro student, amazing, physio, fantastic. Okay, brilliant. So what I want to do is I want to go through a little bit of anatomy of the foot, the two key aspects of the foot that all of us should know, and then potential interventions that we could use that are exercise based, but also some vocabulary to allow us to talk to our podiatry colleagues. So I'm not going to be teaching you podiatry in a 1 hour session, and I know you know that. So I'm going to try and simplify a very complex part of the body. So with the understanding that, of course, thanks Marcus, this is only the very bottom of an integrated system. So everything I talk about is in relation to the whole body, but just this focus is around the foot just now. But we've got to appreciate you can have both descending force and ascending force. So in terms of the foot hitting the floor, which is ascending, and in terms of how you move above your foot, which is a descending force. So that's probably what most of us here are most qualified in and educated in. But in terms of the foot, it is part of a system. There is obviously osseous or bone structures, harder structures. Then you've got the soft tissue of the muscles. And a key factor that Celia has brought up is the neurological system, or the balance proprioceptive system, and the messaging system as well. So what I'm going to talk about is some of the joints, key joints, and understanding those. I can show you, well, I can't because I haven't got a body, but I can talk you through a really simple test. It isn't a kind of be all and end all test, but I really like it because it proves the integrated system. And so you can go and try it on anyone. It's a really simple test that really works. Shows how the plantar fascia works in relation to the gait cycle. And if you can do that test and get a little bit of a reading, you may be able to help them know as and when they might need a foot specialist. So what you've got is obviously a whole complex set of joints. A key one to note is inside here, and it's underneath the talus joint, the talus bone, and it's known as the subtalar joint. So my model has some ligaments over the top which get in the way, but where your lower limb bones come down, your tib fib, just underneath is a talus, and that bone then has the subtalar joint underneath it. Now, it's commonly talked about that the subtalar joint is a key component. No joint muscle structure is more important than another. They all work integrated. But the conversation is that the subtalar joint is where predominantly pronation and supination occur. Clearly, pronation and supination are influenced by all the other stuff. But in terms of foot function, it's described that the subtalar joint is kind of where the body moves over the foot and the foot moves below that joint predominantly. So you've also got the mid-tarsal joints here. And so if your subtalar joint and your mid-tarsal joints are quite lax or loose, there is a good chance you will have a propensity for pronation. So I'm going to go through the gait cycle in a moment and what pronation and supination are. If you have quite stiff joints, you could, through the gait cycle, have more of a propensity towards supination, but I'm going to go through that just now. So let me just talk you through pronation and supination. So both pronation and supination are triplanar motions. So what that means is pronation is made up of 3 actions at the foot. Supination is made up of 3 actions at the foot. And what we understand is going on there is when you are pronating, you will dorsiflex, which is where the toes come towards the shin. You will evert, and eversion is, if you imagine the bottom of the foot, this is your calcaneus or the heel bone, where your Achilles heel will come underneath into the plantar fascia. And when you are pronating, you will have eversion of the sole of the foot. So the heel turns out. So it's that way. Yeah. And abduction. So those 3 components make up pronation. So dorsiflexion, eversion, where the sole of the foot everts out externally, and also abduction. And if you want to take your shoes off, by the way, and you can, if you're like me and you're quite kinesthetic, you want to take a shoe off and have a look at it. So if that's my right foot, pronation would be dorsiflexion, eversion, abduction. So you may want to do that with your foot and see what that feels like. Supination is the opposite. So that is plantar flexion, inversion, adduction. So that if this is my right foot, it's plantar, where you're planting the toes. Inversion, which is where the sole of the foot turns inwards. And adduction. So it's almost where you get that. You can imagine if you're doing that with your foot right now, you will be increasing the arch, which is what we want to happen when you supinate. Now, for non-foot specialists, if you can nail down in your memory those two actions, pronation, supination, you will have a better understanding of foot biomechanics as we go through everything else and beyond this. They're the simplest way, it's the most important things to remember when it comes to simplifying foot function. All right. Let me just check if I've got any questions. Oh, Murray, Marcus. You've written a lot, just bear with me. Keep my slide, my screen. Right, okay. Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for that, Murray. So, so in terms of the two triplanar motions, when we consider them, pronation means that these joints will be, the mid-tarsal joints will unlock, so they'll loosen off. The foot will become flatter, wider, longer and more mobile. And the reason for that is the functionality of pronation within the gait cycle is taking shock. So it allows the force of the floor and the foot coming together to dissipate through the laxity of pronation. So a common misconception is pronation is bad, and it isn't. And I'm going to go into that in a little bit more detail. Pronation is a key component of when your foot hits the floor, when you're running, for example, you need to pronate to allow the shock to be absorbed. And shock is also an important part of foot function. Simon, no, who asked me about, I'll come back to yours, Simon, in a moment. Let me just go back. Phil, your so barefoot, shock is important, and we think it might be a dampener of the force reaction going through the body and up towards vital organs like the brain. So to soften shock too much may not be a good thing, which comes back to some arguments for barefoot running. Obviously there's some degree of shock, but we obviously often wear soft shoes, and so understanding that is important. Supination, however, will, if you imagine those actions again, it's going to lock the mid-tarsal joints here. So it's going to lock them up the way the surfaces come together, which will make a higher arch. And it's going to shorten the foot, narrow it, and make it more stiff and rigid because of the way the big toe, which is known as the hallux, that's going to lift as you come over. I'm going to talk about the gait cycle in a moment. But as it lifts, this all engages through the plantar flexors. And the idea is then that you can toe off on a rigid foot. So supination is for propulsion. And so that is, again, another key component of running, walking, the gait cycle. So let's just talk about the gait cycle and as you go through it. So again, imagine this foot. So we'll go from heel strike. So as the heel comes down, the calcaneus is the only part of the foot that's on the floor. So everything else is loose. So you are technically pronating. All right. The toes will be up through the dorsiflexors engagement. And as you're coming down, pronation, 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 until you get forefoot landing. Yeah. And then you start to get the engagement from the plantar flexors as the toe extends, as I've just mentioned. The plantar fascia will pull and tighten, bring you into a supinated foot or an arch, so that as the body transitions over the top of the foot, it begins to supinate. hopefully. I'll come back to that in a moment. So the good gait cycle would be at that midpoint, you're in neutral. And then as you start to, the body transitions over the foot, the big toe starts to extend, all this engages, the calves engage, you begin to supinate, hopefully. And then you've got that kind of rigid foot to toe off. So hopefully that all makes sense. So the problem that most people talk about is overpronation, right? Or, you know, oh, I'm a pronator, like this really bad thing. Technically, the problem is probably not overpronation. It kind of is. But technically, if we understand the problem is actually late supination, that's probably technically more accurate. So let me just talk through that gait cycle again. So if you have a loose set of mid-tarsal joints, a loose subtalar joint, potentially, as your body is coming over the top, you are still pronating because everything is loose. So that you get that kind of angling through the body where the foot's abducting. And what you're getting is a loose foot trying to propel you forwards. So it's technically late supination that we more commonly hear is called overpronation. One of the problems with thinking of pronation as a bad thing is sticking in a wedge orthotic or support to stop pronation. And let me just explain exactly what I'm saying. I'm not suggesting that if you're diagnosed as a pronator that you shouldn't have a support. I'm not saying you should either, but I'm not saying you should. What I'm saying is if we fill the gap and you cannot pronate at all, you will lose some of that shock absorption. Potentially. And this is where it comes back to footwear. So I'm going to come back to Phil's question in a moment. Does that all kind of make sense so far? You can just nod, or let's have a look who's got the videos on. Brilliant. Hey, Robbie, how you doing? We've got some others. Hi, Will, Sam. Good to have you all you guys in. So thanks for dropping by. Let me just come over, check if any questions have come up. Yep. Thanks for, yeah, so Marcus is adding some stuff in. Brilliant. Fantastic. Okay. So, in terms of understanding foot function, what is important for us as exercise movement professionals is, does the client have a propensity for pronation, and do they have the capacity to resupinate? They're the key questions that we want answering. We may want to speak to our podiatry colleagues to get that answer, or one of the things we can do is teach you, we teach about a dozen foot tests. 6 are hands-on, so we can't teach that right now, and 6 are visual. So we are teaching that now. That's part of our Running Biomechanics workshop. So if you're interested in that stuff, you can learn how to visually assess the foot. There's something called the, I think it was Anthony Redmond designed the Foot Posture Index, where you do pretty much 6 visual tests of the foot in stance to take markers. Those 6 tests collectively, individually give you a score, you add it up, and then you can say whether somebody is at the extreme end of one or the other. And at that point, what we wouldn't do ever is say to a client, you're a pronator, because that can only be done by somebody who's qualified to do that. What we can say is you have a propensity for pronation. There's a big difference on our insurance remit, and so our vocabulary, our language, and our communication is really important. So one of the things that I want to be super clear on, and why I'm really pedantic, is exactly what I'm saying and what I'm not saying, which is exactly what I do with a client as well. It keeps me within my remit. I would document everything I say as well. So we can say, I think you have a propensity for pronation, so this is what we're going to do. Or I think you lack the capacity for supination, or I think you can say that. What we can't say is you're a supinator. Be careful. It sounds like nothing, But as we go online, as we gain more skills, as standards become harder and harsher, which I think is a good thing, I want to keep you guys technically clear on exactly what I'm suggesting you are able to do within your profession, from what I've seen of everybody here. So none of us here are foot specialist qualified, unless maybe some of the physios have got something a bit more than us. But in terms of diagnostics and prescription, what we also can't do within our remit is say, right, Simon, you need an A6 Nimbus 4.6 in blue with red legs. We can't be that prescriptive either. We could suggest somebody we feel has a propensity for pronation spends less time in ballet pumps, maybe, and they might need something that's a bit more supportive. And again, that trying to not be prescriptive is a key component, really. So let me know if there's any questions on any of that. So in terms of a really simple test, now I don't know how I'm going to do this. I can show you on the foot, but what I can't show is what it does. I'm going to talk to you about what's known as the JAX test. So if you are not on your own, you have a willing volunteer, you could try this right now, and you would basically get them to stand in front of you, and you would kneel down in front of their feet. Let me just push you back a little bit. And the JAX test is a way of engaging the windlass mechanism, which is basically that hallux extension that hopefully engages the plantar fascia and allows them to toe off or not. So you get them to stand in front of you. They would look straight ahead, and you would say, try not to help or resist. Place your hands on the floor and your thumbs, both thumbs, underneath the big toe, and you would then push the toe upwards. Let it go and push. And what you're doing when you do that is try and encourage them to completely relax. And you're going to kind of guess, or roughly subjective, how hard it is to push the toe up. And there's a score of 1 to 5. If it's a 1, it flies up really easily, and they drop very easily into the arch and on the lateral side of the foot, which is supination. That's super easy. 1. That's almost too easy. If you literally you're pushing the toe and it ain't going anywhere, that's me, by the way, then they would be a 5. So there's no arch forming, nothing happens. You're pushing as hard as you can. And I think statistically, is it somewhere around, when you walk, it's about 3 to 4 times your body weight going through that movement. So unless they've got a sore toe, get it up there, give it a good push. Because if your thumbs are not going to replicate 3 to 4 times their body weight. So as long as they're not uncomfortable, then give it a bit of welly, give it a good push. If you get no arch, you would score a 5. Now, subjectively, we've got the 4, 3, 2 in there as well. 2 is about where we want to be. So in terms of, well, how do I know if there are 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5? 5, no arch, doesn't move, and you're really, really pushing that toe up. 1, you barely touch the toe and the foot falls out. So they're the 2 extremes. We want to be somewhere in the middle. The only way you're going to know what a 2, 3, or 4 feels like is when you've felt a few feet. That will be an interesting party when we come out of lockdown. Guys, come round my ass. I want to feel your feet. I want to check your windlass mechanism. Okay, so the JAX test, the other thing you'll notice on the JAX test is when you push the toe up, anyone who is a 1, 2, 3, or 4, what you will see probably is as you push the toe up, the whole body will just waft one way, because you've got that system. As you push the toe up, the foot will roll out, the leg will roll out, the pelvis will tilt, slightly rotate, the spine will rotate, and you'll see the shoulders sway a little bit. It's a great way to show a client, don't tell them what you're doing, just do it. So see how your shoulder's moving, so that they can see that when you move their toe, it influences the shoulders. This is a big part of what I help people to understand. Tristan's just tested his girlfriend. 5, impossible to okay, so what we could say to her, Tristan, is you have a propensity for pronation. So it's one of the most common foot types. So I am a 5. I'm 5 on my right foot, and I'm probably a 4.5 on my left. So I've got pretty heavy feet. I have a propensity for pronation. I don't wear orthotics. I did do for a period of time. I'm going to talk about that in a moment. So does that make sense, the Jack's test? So Tristan's obviously tried it. He's had a go. He's able to say a 5. But again, the numbers in between are going to be subjective for a while. But that's just one of 6 tests that we would do hands-on. And as I said, you've got the Anthony Redmond's Foot Posture Index, which is collectively evidence-based. So that's a really good model. We've got that on the as I say, on the Running Biomechanics, if you want to go and have a look at that one. Let me see, what else did I want to talk about? Okay, yes, so what is the big question, right? So in terms of the more we understand about our clients' feet, our own feet, what can we as exercise professionals do to improve the function of our foot? So we've got a couple of, we've got 3 things, if you like, 3 concepts. Ascending exercise or exercises that are below, like, of the foot. Descending movement capacity, so exercise in terms of how our knees function, pelvis, spine, how well our whole body moves over the foot, and shoes, or not shoes in Phil's case. So I'm just going to talk briefly about all of that. So one of the things to be mindful of is the way that I've just described the Jack's test can then go up to the shoulder. I'd like you to, for a moment, in fact, let's do something practical, because I like being practical. Let me see how many videos we've got on. Oh, we've only got those guys. Right, okay. Everybody stand up. If you're physically able, just stand up for a second. I just want to show you something in relation to what I've just said. So I want you to pretend, wink, wink, that you have a bad posture caused by very overactive pec minor, and your shoulders are around your body like this. So just bring your shoulders forwards in that round shoulder posture, and then keep them there. And now try and squat down and do a really nice squat with spine extension. No. Alison's shaking her head. It's not going to happen, is it, Simon? No. Okay, grab a seat. So in the same way that the foot is going to change, did you get that one bit? Did you do a snapshot of that one, Fiona, on your phone? In the same way your foot can influence your shoulder can influence your foot, and everything in between. So any problem, pain, movement issue you see or experience has the capacity for coming from anywhere in your body, and or any combination of problems within your body. So very often, if people have a foot problem, what do? We go see a foot specialist, right? Which is why we generally, as exercise professionals, don't learn about the foot, because we've got foot specialists. However, if the foot problem is because you have bad posture, maybe more on one side than the other, creating a rotation in your spine, you may have a functionally long leg because your pelvis doesn't work properly because you sit down all day and you always sit one way, or you drive and you use one foot, which means you have a functionally long leg on one side, which means your knee rolls in more on that side, which means your foot on that side pronates more. Does that all make sense? So your capacity for pronation, or your propensity for pronation, may be a result of either the knee, the pelvis, the spine, or the shoulder, or any combination of those. That is how we as movement practitioners can help foot function in one way. Yeah. The other way is to understand what we might do about the foot. So there's 3 ways we could sort of think about training the foot. So Celia's mentioned one, which is balance training. So literally balancing. And balancing can come in the scope of single leg, unstable surface, no shoes. So for me, no shoes is a balancing act if I'm on one leg and then moving. So considering training a client rather than simply strength-based moves, deliberate balance training. Now, I would always start someone balance training on a static surface before destabilizing them on a BOSU or a wobble mat or something. Always get them balanced on a stable surface first. People always think, oh, they're not very stable, I'll stick them on a BOSU. That's actually really advanced if you really focus on balance training. So if you don't follow me yet on Instagram, I recently did, yesterday I think it was, I actually did on my Instagram page, which is biomechanics_education, some no shoe single leg moves that could be really good foot biomechanics training. And what you'll see is, because I've got no shoes on, I basically do a single leg deadlift into a pistol squat on the same foot. And if you watch the foot, while it looks like a leg, hip, and believe me, it is leg and hip training. If you watch my foot, the amount of effort my foot ligaments, you can see it really kind of hanging on as the free leg swings through and the foot is very balanced. I have a lot of pistol envy from some of my colleagues. So Marcus just saying that. And obviously I only showed the video of my good leg. I've got to be honest. My bad leg doesn't look that balanced. So I must be honest and post my bad leg one day. So to Celia's point, go and check out some of those videos. I give loads of video stuff away on Instagram. So have a look on there. You will see balance ideas. Another way of training balance, which I like, which again, thinking of the chain, is a hip hitch. So I would do this on a step, potentially. So I would stand on the step with this leg, let this leg hang freely, and then drop the hip and then lift it. So you can do it without the step actually. So literally drop and lift. And this action, the hip hitch action, is what happens every time you take a step forwards or walking, is you will hitch so that the foot comes away from the floor, drop, and then you hitch and drop. So the action of the hip hitch is a great chain technique for foot function and balance. So you can do it statically and then through to the hip. So the whole kind of chain, working in QL. So you're lifting the opposite hip as the, lateral flexion of the hip, of the spine, hitching the hip, which is abduction of the standing leg. And so it's a great kind of chain. I'm going to come over in a second. Just, I know people are posting, just make sure I'm up to date. Does that all make sense from the balance perspective? So you could literally just take shoes off. For me, that's a challenge. You could then add movement. From the rehab world, so Marcus world, another thing that I had when I snapped my ACL was to stand on one leg, take the other leg off the floor, obviously, and then balance, literally using my eyes as the destabilizer to come over. And so it's using a moving stimulus or on one leg and then throwing a ball. So they could do that against the wall because we're not with each other at the minute. So, and then you do the same on the other side. And I would advocate, if they're less stable on one side, you do it for longer or more reps or sets on the not so balanced side. So that can be a bit controversial, is to give asymmetrical training. But if they're asymmetrical in their strength and balance, you would do it asymmetrically until they're up to a balanced perspective. Let me just check what people are saying. Right, let me go back, bear with me, and then just catch up. So and you can post any more questions. So yeah, there you go, Debbie. You've had some balance work. Simon, client asked for my insight on the use of silicone ankle and foot orthosis. I'm coming to that now. As an aid of rehabilitation, it was anything. I don't know, just wonder if you had heard about it. Yeah, I will come to any. I will group orthoses together in terms of conceptually, because there's all sorts of different contraptions out there. Yep. So there's some great posts down here, guys, if you want to have a look and read. Brooks trainers, about the best you can get, but I'm a barefoot Bevo lover. Right, okay. I'll come to a generic view on those in a second. Pronation necessary for noble rotation. Yeah. Simon, can I ask, more and more I'm hearing on professionals recommending water movement for rehab to a number of joints. Yes. So yeah, good question. So to Simon's point about using water, let me always give you both arguments, pros and cons, to help you out. Pros, brilliant for using a different type of resistance. Brilliant for people with maybe joint or balance issues because the water is supporting them. On the flip side, cons is you don't get the impact for bone density, such a reduction of osteoporosis. So ideally combined with loaded strength training as well. For rehab to number of joints, can this alter person's pronation or supination? Would it alter pronation, supination? Oh, there might be an argument that it would. But if you think of the force of the water versus the force of your body over your foot, there's a big difference. Walking in water, 100%. I think walking in water is a good thing. Will that change your capacity for pronation, supination? I'm not sure. It's not something I have thought about or studied. I'm just speaking off the cuff now, thinking about it. Using water to waft the foot against, which I'm going to go into exercises in a moment, I don't see why not. I think some demographics will benefit, particularly rehab, who are limited on strength, movement, balance, all that stuff potentially. Maybe Marcus can add some thoughts in on that. Debbie. Yep, no problem. Yep, definitely good to squeeze the glutes. Forward to the jacks test on the hubby. Yeah, brilliant. So in terms of what we can do, it's all right, my other half's been looking in the window. I don't know if there's something going on. So the joys of live entertainment with dogs and kids everywhere. Okay. So what can we do about foot exercises? So you've probably seen several things. There's some great movement educators on Instagram, and I'm supposed to remember them all and tell you, aren't I? Obviously Biomechanics Education, but one of my favorites, if I can remember it, Move You, M-O-V-E-U, hilarious, the no shirt guy. So he's on there on Instagram. There's some other guys. Let me see if I can remember. Yeah, and oh no, injury. Oh, here we go. Infinite Health Team. I like these guys as well. Infinite Health Team, and then Move You. Those two groups. Some of the stuff not so much, but other stuff really, really like. And the Infinite Health Team have done a whole series of foot exercises with bands that are just brilliant. You'd have to go back through their stuff. I think it was to do with bunions and plantar fasciitis, that kind of stuff. But if you've got a band, let me just grab a band. Yeah, I'll get it, you know. Where's my band? Bear with me, guys. Can't find my band. Let me get it for you. Hang on. Don't know what I've done with it. Let me use my top. I don't know where my band's gone. Disappeared. Right. So you do realise I'm going to expose my foot to you now. The dragon claw. No, I'm going to use my good foot. Okay. So if you have a propensity for pronation, so you have loose joints, you're a heavy foot on the jack, so a 5. The joints are loose, so the foot's heavy, your knees buckle in, you've got that knee valgus going on. You could very simply take a resistance band, place it around the foot, and resist supination, because you want to improve the strength of your supinators. So your problem is you don't supinate soon enough, probably. So you're a late supinator. So we want to encourage the action of supination to occur sooner by strengthening. So the band will come off to the side a little bit, and then I want to push the foot into plantar inversion, plantar flexion, inversion, adduction. So you come out this side, yeah? So you get your band and you do that. In simple terms, if somebody had a stiff foot and they struggle to shock absorb, so we haven't spoken about that. So if somebody has a very stiff foot and they're a 1 on the Jack's test, they fly over, they may struggle to absorb shock. So they may need foot mobility work, that's moving over the foot. We wouldn't never manipulate a foot. Manipulation of joints is a very high, well, it is the higher risk of the manual therapy skills. And I would only recommend a manipulative therapist with a qualification to manipulate joints, because if you manipulate joints too much or in the wrong way, you can't put a joint back if it wears away. So that just holds more risk. But if somebody is a supinator, you just go the other way. So you would then want to strengthen the foot pronators. And so you're going to ask the foot to do dorsiflexion, eversion, abduction against resistance. Thanks, Marcus, for that. So Simon, Marcus, sorry, his name's Murray. You got it. Okay. There's a link down there for info on water rehab. So brilliant. Thank you for that. It's something I've never, particularly in relation to the foot, I've never been asked, if I'm honest. So I was shooting from the hip on that one. So you're very welcome. So in terms of foot exercises, the balancing, as I've said, is a really good one. A really nice one. Let me see if I can show you this one that I learned from, who taught me this one? I think it was those Infinite Health Team guys. I can't remember now. Where you'd be on the floor and then you focus on dragging the toes against the floor. So you're using the friction of the floor. Sometimes use a scrunch a towel. So you would drag it towards you, so keep the obviously on the floor. So you'd be standing over it. So can you see how that's forming my arch? So it's encouraging that supination of the foot. So that's another one. So in terms of what we would actually do, no matter how much you learn about the foot, as an exercise professional, again, the difference between you all in terms of sports therapy, so level 3 up to sports degree level, which is, you're all kind of bracketed at the moment. It needs standardizing a bit better. We probably wouldn't be doing anything podiatric. We would still just be using either pronation, supination exercises, but you manual therapists may be doing manual therapy techniques as well. But that's again going to be on soft tissue rather than mobilizing joints, unless you're qualified in that, if that makes sense. So Alison, can add a bottle of water onto a towel for resistance. Yeah, use a towel. Yep. Put weight on the end of a towel, so you're actually dragging. Yeah. Oh, there you go. So yeah, they're having a little competition over there, like getting the feedback in. Brilliant. So you've probably come across quite a few of these. I think one of the key things to remember is, particularly with things like plantar fasciitis, which is a common foot problem. If you think about, where's my foot gone? Oh, there it is. This foot, not that one. If you think about foot biomechanics now, in terms of the way we work, if you imagine that toe extending, that is going to stretch on the plantar fascia. Yeah. If you also imagine the way the plantar fascia gets affected by the Achilles, which goes up into your soleus, your gastroc, and they carry on up through, obviously you're going up through the chain, the knee, the hamstrings, into the hip and everything else. Your plantar fascia could be a result of something going on in the opposite shoulder. Did I just drop the mic? Does that make sense? Now, obviously, we want to have remedies to reduce discomfort here, but please understand, in every case, unless a client has had literally trauma, they've fallen off a bike, had a car accident or something, if something is making them feel uncomfortable, but nothing, they haven't actually done anything, it's just insidious, it's come on over time, you know, repetitive strain injury or plantar fasciitis, these kind of issues are not necessarily because of the plantar fascia. It's not necessarily from here, it's not necessarily the foot, it could be the foot, but be aware that we as movement practitioners have a more holistic view of the body. We may lack to some degree the foot, maybe even the manual therapists out there a little bit as well. But what we want to do is really hone our skills in the areas that we are insured in, qualified to deal with, and able to use. Understand a bit about what the podiatrists know. So a little bit like today, this is just a little 1 hour tidbit. We just touched on a few subjects. But what I want to do is open your conceptual perspective of foot function, foot biomechanics, what we can do, what we can't do. And actually what we would do is not a huge amount other than pronation, supination exercises, maybe guidance on when to see a foot specialist. And then I'm going to talk about orthotics. I knew I was getting to a point. So in terms of orthotics, now we had in one of these previous ones, a friend of mine, Sam Chidwick, who is, I need to remember his Superfoot, S-U-P-A foot, superfoot.com. He is a very modern thinking podiatrist, fully qualified podiatrist. He also understands exercise in the whole body. And he was synergistic with the way we present orthoses. Another great resource, let me type it in here as well, is Katie Bowman. I've spoken about her quite a bit. And she is a Canadian biomechanist. And I love her approach to movement and the holistic, sort of, she talks about whole body barefoot and the whole body and sort of integrating natural movement into your lifestyle. And so, yeah, she's amazing, Deb. So in terms of orthoses, so what orthoses do, and I've actually got a, let me just pull up a presentation I did at the Therapy Expo. I don't know if you remember it, Marcus, when I volunteered to cover for someone for a lecture, and I thought I'd have an hour, and I said, yeah, I'll do foot biomechanics made easy. And then Gary said, you've got 20 minutes. I was like, oh. So just one slide. So current thinking around, let's call it movement control versus load. So this relates to orthotics. So I'll just read out the slide for you so you can see what I'm looking at. So the current thinking about movement control versus load, the importance of insoles, and let me kind of bring into the insole bracket, foot supports, wedges, the silicone things, anything that is an extrinsic support of the foot that's not just your natural structures, substructures. So something from the outside coming in should be to change the ascending load rather than to change the motion. So rather than to change pronation or supination. So let me reword that again. While insoles, foot supports, orthoses of any kind may change the amount of motion, it is not the motion change that matters, it's the resultant load alteration. So in terms of where we come from is orthoses can be great, they're great for changing load. If you hurt, they can take pain away. However, they may not be the long-term solution. Ideally, we don't want to be having orthotics, ideally, because sometimes we're going to be barefoot. They're an extrinsic intervention. It's not a natural part of our foot function. Some people need them. I'm not saying we shouldn't have them. Some people need them. Some people need them long term. If somebody has a structural leg length discrepancy, which is where the femurs are different lengths, they're born with that, which is a very small population, or if they had a broken bone and they're left with a leg length discrepancy, which probably happens less now, and that gives them pain, then an orthotic, an asymmetrical prescription may be a long-term solution. If somebody gets pain because of their biomechanical setup, so soft tissues are dysfunctional, they get a sore knee, they have orthotics, the knee feels better. Oh, the orthotics are brilliant, but the sore knee was coming from a functional discrepancy at the pelvis. Over time, those orthotics could then eventually give the client a back problem. So there is an argument, there's always an argument for both. There's an argument for and against. And it is about, for us as movement practitioners, working with the client, with the podiatrist, with the physios, with the therapist, with each other, that over time we get enough information to try and help the client's body do as much as it can biomechanically through exercise and movement habits, improve the way they move, to reduce the loads that are making them uncomfortable, to either remove the orthotic or reduce the orthotic, or they may need it long term. So does that all make sense? I'm trying to articulate a broad way of thinking about feet, foot biomechanics, exercise for feet, orthotics, shoes, etc. Thanks, Marcus. Our calf raises press at the ankle wise. Yeah, supinate. Yeah. So if you think of a calf raise, that is your plantar flexion. Yeah. So for propulsion, we need power and strength in it. Now, one of the structures I haven't spoken about that I think I'll just mention briefly, because I realize I've got about 5 minutes here, is nerve tension. So a common contributor to tight nerves, tight hamstrings, or the appearance of tight muscles in the posterior leg, lower limb, tension in the plantar fascia or discomfort in the plantar fascia, is tension in the nervous system. And so where the calf or the hamstring may appear tight, particularly in runners, that type of demographic quite commonly, unless you work out how to release the nerves or the things that are influencing the nerves that may be tight, your hamstrings and your calves won't let go. They will carry on being tight. The plantar fascia will remain. So where a solution doesn't work, it's not the whole answer. So it doesn't mean that solution's a crap idea. Like, it doesn't mean orthotics are crap. It just means for that person at that time, that's not the solution for that problem. So not necessarily, no, because for foot biomechanics, Sam, the active plantar fascia, sorry, get my words out. The active plantar flexion is part of the gait cycle. There's a really simple test, and I haven't got it up now, that was done recently, 500 odd subjects for a calf raise strength test, and they had the individuals on a 10-degree incline performing as many single leg calf raises as they can on one side and then the other. And I have got the scores somewhere. And so that would, unless you're within the norms that research showed, so if you're down, then a good technique would be to do more calf raises. Calf raising is part of supination, because when you go into a calf raise, you're using those posterior soft tissues. So that is the strength and power of that could be inhibited by the nervous system, which is what I was saying about a moment ago. Yeah, I totally agree, Marcus. So taking the foot into different variations to stress the ligaments. So something I'm just writing a post for Instagram about is when a really simple concept again is we're all told to go and walk right now. So under the current climate, the one exercise everyone is doing is walking. If you do the same path the same route, on the same terrain, in the same shoes, across the same amount of time, at the same pace, your foot experience of movement will be practiced at that particular training cycle or movement kind of environment. So maybe we should consider getting clients to walk, run on different terrains, distances, speeds. And I know from the running guys, you'll know about fartlek training and speed drills and all that stuff. But even just in regular people, so runners are a bit different. You know what I mean? People who are not specifically runners, we should encourage them to find a hill, walk up it, get that real. Oh, sorry, I thought someone was ringing me. I've just hit my 15,000 steps, wafting my arms around. Is that a cheat? We should be encouraging them to do the route backwards, not run backwards. I mean, do it the other way. Find a different route, go on different terrains, let your feet experience ligamentous loads on different terrains. And again, but building up to that. So rather than doing your regular 5-miler suddenly on off-road, you might do a mile off-road and then 4 miles on-road and then do longer. And so you build up the tolerance. Yeah, totally. And the soleus as well is a huge pump for your blood and everything to be pumped back up after that sort of the gravity pulling everything down. The soleus is a really big pump. It's actually a bigger muscle than the gastroc, even though we don't see it that way. It goes further along the back of the leg than the gastrocs do. The two kind of like what you see as the gastroc. So hopefully, wow, 1 hour monologue pretty much. Not sure I like that idea, but there you go. Hopefully I've answered a few of your foot questions. There was quite a lot in there, but I think from obviously it's an hour. Hopefully what I've done is generated some thinking to help you either go and look for further education through some of the sites, through our website, through our other courses, look at my Instagram page, any of our social media, through other providers. You may go and find more information about foot biomechanics. I think it all collectively comes together to just enhance what we can offer within our service. The simple side of it is pronation, supination exercises, the right shoes, which is not for us to decide, and are they moving better, or their descending force. We can definitely improve all that. That's what we all do. We collectively being exercise professionals and manual therapists. So, okay, Grenia, thank you very much. Yes, see you. Yeah, hopefully see you in Belfast. Fiona, taught my hip biomechanics and meant I've never worn orthotics since. Fantastic. Back pain's gone. Alison, really enjoyed it. You're very welcome, Alison. Spread the word. This is going to be here again next week. I've got to think of the subject, haven't I? iPhone, whoever iPhone is, you're very well. Oh, it's you. Hi there, darling. Yes, you're in private again. I don't know whether that's deliberate or not. Fiona, 15 years of freedom. Tristan, you're very welcome. Sarah, you're all welcome. Listen, look after your feet, but more importantly, look after everything. Go and move a little bit more, or move well, move more, and help your clients. We have a duty of care, guys. So if you're not online and you want some help with that, let me know. I've also done a video. You can go onto YouTube, by the way. I've got a stack of videos over on YouTube, Biomechanics Education. Got a whole channel there where you can see the squat projects. So there's how to test and move your whole body yourself. There's the I Move Freely classes. So remedial techniques that you can use. There are interviews with biomechanics coaches, and there was something else I was going to talk about. Let me go back and see if I remember what it was. Can't remember now. There was something on there. Oh yes, 5 steps to a successful online presence. So if you're not online and you're wondering how can I do that, or you're online, you're wondering am I doing this the right way, I did a load of research into the big business gurus out there. So Tony Robbins, you know, the whole stack of guys, collected them all together. 5 major steps. I found it really enlightening from my research, and so I just wanted to share it. It's a free video. It's about an hour webinar. Go and check it out and see, you know, see if that helps. Just conceptually takes you through 5 things to think about if you're going online. I think we're going to be online for a while longer, especially you manual therapists, I'm afraid. So if you want some remedial exercise stuff to use with your clients, I think I Move Freely, the I Move Freely instructor is a brilliant online set of muscle energy techniques, nerve mobilization. So that would be a good one for you guys. So you're still here. Are you waiting for me to say something else? Thanks, guys, for coming along. Spread the word. I'll see you here next Wednesday, 12 o'clock. Let's do some more biomechanics stuff. Move well, move more. Take care, guys. Stay safe. See you soon.